What's happening, Browns fans? Happy Tuesday. Happy loss Tuesday after Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns this weekend. Disappointing game. Welcome to Pete and Joe's weekly discussion on the Browns and their opponents. In Week 4, we saw the Detroit Lions hand us a pretty tough loss there, Pete. How you doing, big guy?
Well, I'm doing all right. I assume you're doing pretty well since Tua had a great game and is just turning it right around.
Don't say that. Don't say that now. You're going to get me in all sorts of bad moods going on here. But yeah, Tua played all right. He stayed upright. Tyreek Hill, on the other hand, is in for a rough travel for the rest of this year. That's for sure.
He's done. Never. I don't see him ever playing again.
No, me neither. An injury like that, the age that he's at, and plus how his game is absolutely reliant on him having that extra gear that nobody else has. So yeah, I'm with you. I feel like Tyreek is pretty much donezo on his career. But let's shift our focus back to the Browns, back to Week 4. And once again, thank you to the OBR streaming network for hosting us tonight. If you guys haven't made it over to OBR.com, you are missing out. You want to sign up and get exclusive insider access from the greats, guys like Fred Greetham, Lade Atkins, Pete Smith, who I'm talking to right now. It's a constant array of information coming out of there. These guys have boots on the ground in Berea. It is worth every penny. Check it out whenever you guys get the chance. Now, Pete, we might have a quarterback change on the cusp here in Cleveland. I don't think we've heard anything official, but we've heard all sorts of bells and whistles all day from Mary Kay and then random CBS sources and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on the quarterback situation right now?
Well, let's start here. These are the least definitive talks of a quarterback change I've heard in a while, where it's things are looking like a quarterback change or they're heavily considering a quarterback change. I'll believe it when I see it, and ultimately it comes down to a few things. Look, I mean, Joe Flacco is working on pulling himself out of a job, but I think because of some of the stuff they're changing, bringing in Cam Robinson, potentially switching, getting Jack Conklin back, and just trying to get this receiver set up better, it wouldn't shock me. And not to mention, you're going international, all the reasons to sort of just get through it and then figure it out on the other side. Having said that, given the injuries we already know about, the Minnesota Vikings have decided that Brian O'Neill's already out, J.J. McCarthy's already out, Andrew Van Ginkel's already out, Jonah Jackson is probably going to be out. They're starting center Ryan Kelly's in the protocol. Not that the defensive side gets all that much easier, though Van Ginkel is a very good player.
Yeah,
but they just may look at this as a very winnable game and feel like if this comes down to if they feel Dylan Gabriel is going to give them a better chance to win, then that just may be the answer to the question. Now, ultimately, again, we'll see if that's really how they feel about it. I don't see it as a panacea. I don't think it's going to fix all their problems, and that's why I think they may wait. I think there's an element to this where you just trade for a tackle that you're going to start as soon as he's ready to go. And there may be a sense that you want to send a message to the locker room that you didn't trade for a guy and just to put him in front of the rookie and not even give the veteran a shot behind what should be better blocking.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. As the weeks have gone on, and especially which weeks, right? We just got past the murderous part of the schedule. So if Joe Flacco is going to get an olive branch from anywhere, it's going to be from the schedule getting a little bit easier. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I know the Minnesota defense is nothing to be trifled with. And I know Pittsburgh is going to be a tough game. But for Christ's sakes, man, the guy just went head up with Burrow, Lamar, Jordan Love, Jared Goff. And these teams have defenses with them. I mean, maybe not Cincinnati, but it was week 1. But still, like, he just went through
Trey Hendrickson, though. You went Trey Hendrickson. Then you got a break from the Ravens, though they played like absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Then you go from Trey Hendrickson, Ravens, Micah Parsons, and then Aiden Hutchinson. Those are 3 of the premier pass rushers. It's those guys and basically Myles Garrett before you get to well, I'll say before you get to a guy like TJ Watt, but those are like the guys.
Yep.
Got them all in 4 weeks or 3 weeks. And you're going to get Watt here in a minute anyway.
Of course. And you're doing all of this with backup tackles. I mean, say what you will about Cornelius Lucas. He came into the year a backup. And we all know about KT. I mean, he's not ready for that position. He probably never will be at the level that the Browns need him to play. At least on the left side.
Well, I think Cornelius Lucas is largely what you get for a sixth lineman. I also think he looks horrible because he literally went from left tackle blocking, left tackle dealing with Trey Hendrickson. Then he gets Micah Parsons, and then he gets Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to get boat raced by these guys. The same reason that Myles Garrett just gave Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker all he can handle. Like, you're going to lose those matchups. So I have – look, ultimately, I want to get to a point where they can get to Cam Robinson and Jack Conklin. But I do think that if in their world where Cornelius Lucas is playing, he will look better by virtue of not having to go against those guys. I think that's just a natural improvement you're going to see. Yeah.
So a couple other roster moves. So obviously DeAndre Carter and Cedric Tillman gone on IR, and they've elevated Malachi Corley and Gage Larvadan. I'm assuming that Gage is going to be the punt returner. Malachi will be the kick returner. How do you feel about that? And is that your assumption as well?
Malachi Corley, I have no idea. I mean, that seems reasonable because the guy doesn't know what he's doing in terms of running routes or anything. So
yeah, and he's a tank.
You would bring him up for two main reasons. That the reason you laid out, and maybe he can do something else on special teams, or that the Browns got some sense. And obviously, Malachi Corley could tell them, or his agent would tell them, "Hey, Team X is trying to sign my guy. Like, do you want to sign? You want the opportunity to sign him? So moving sucks. I don't want to have to travel and all this other stuff. Do you want to go ahead and activate me?" So your reason is probably the most simple. That yes, he could potentially return kickoffs. I mean, that is what Malachi Corley is theoretically good at. It was get him the ball in space and let him run with it and create and do all this other stuff. So I totally get it. I agree with you. Gage Larvadan is probably going to be the punt returner. Say what you will. He was fearless in preseason. He was at least willing to catch the ball and try to return it. So, yeah, I mean, those things are logical. DeAndre Carter, like every week, you just sort of went in saying, please justify your existence. And unfortunately, after the week one, where he had pretty good punt returns, he obviously gets the concussion, just hasn't really done much since. So there, unfortunately for him, there are a whole lot of people who will not be sad to see him go. The Cedric Tillman thing's a bummer, but I'm curious to see how they sort of work their way around this. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to play a lot of X. He's been playing a lot of X, but when they want to put another guy on the line of scrimmage and it's not David Njoku, I could easily see them just saying, screw it, we're going to move Harold Fannin around the formation and use him in a variety of ways because Jamari Thrash could do it. I just don't think that's what they want him to do. I think they'd rather him be off the line and be able to do those things. The other thing that could be interesting, and I know there's been clamoring for this anyway, and they've used him sparingly, is just to say, screw it, we're going to put Dylan Sampson out there and see if, even if we're not asking him to run a route tree, we're just saying finding ways to put the ball in his hands and see what he can do with it. Then that's an option. I don't assume, and I could be dead wrong, given the way they fast-tracked a guy like Isaiah Bond, I don't assume Malachi Corley is anywhere near ready to go as far as being a receiver. He could be a manufactured touch guy, but they have Isaiah Bond for that. Dylan Sampson seemingly would be better than that. So that's sort of where I look at as far as those moves go.
So let's we're going to talk wide receivers when we do our typical breakdown as we do. So let's get into that. Let's start focusing on quarterbacks. But before we do, guys, remember weekly 6 p.m. We got Browns 3D with Jeff Lloyd. Phenomenal one-man show. Does the trick every time. You want to get hard-hitting Browns information, come to Jeff Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. here on the OBR streaming network. Okay, so we touched on Flacco a little bit in the beginning, but let's really dive in with this game. Obviously, the numbers weren't there. He turned the ball over. He made some poor decisions. He took some bad sacks. look, Flacco's a guy that needs an offensive line at this stage in his career. He doesn't have it. Not only are you competing with the Detroit defense, that vicious pass rush, but you got to keep pace with the Detroit offense on the other side. I mean, this was just a nightmare game. And just like Baltimore, if we turn the ball over, we're going to lose. We're going to lose ugly.
Yeah, look, another reason I think that the Browns may stick with Flacco is the first drive. Mm-hmm. They were clean. They were pretty smooth on it, other than for reasons that I cannot fully explain, trying to sneak him in twice at 40 years old. Fortunately, they finally gave it to Quinchon and he punched it in. But other than that, it looked good. Like it was as smooth as it's been all season. The ball came out on time and went to the right guys. They caught the ball because everything went on schedule.
Yeah,
you got the ground. Jerry Jeudy. You got an explosive play. I'm almost 100% positive every time he has an explosive play, they score on the drive, which is why, we'll get to him, but it's why you're going to keep trying to feed him the ball, because it leads to points. The thing that, so you get through that drive, the offensive line looks okay. Joe Flacco looks good, 5 for 5, all those things. And then after that, everything sort of goes back to the way it has been, or at least the way it's been going. The things that I find frustrating are, if you are going to single block Aiden Hutchinson, that says to me that the ball is some sort of catch, step, throw, or some very fast clock. And there were too many situations where Joe Flacco is not getting it out on time, looking at stuff too long and just not making a decision, or getting just whacked, or taking sacks, or all those things. And you contrast that to me watching Jared Goff, who he threw for 168 yards. Yeah, he had a couple decent throws, but mostly it was just stuff that was schemed open for him. Other than that, he was pretty below average for the most part, and the Browns defense had everything to do with that. But the thing that Jared Goff did well, save for the one mistake he made where he misread the coverage, is he just said, okay, you got me, threw the ball incomplete, and moved on to the next one. And there were any number of times you saw him frustrated, shaking his head as he walked off the field, because they're going to punt and everything. But the bottom line is he didn't do any harm. And even on the interception he threw, it was basically an arm.
It was a punt. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was a key difference, where it feels like, and this is where Joe Flacco is not sort of looking like the 18-year veteran that he's supposed to, is it seemed like Joe Flacco was too intent on trying to see plays through that weren't there, making bad situations potentially worse, or just not recognizing what was going on. There were times where I thought his eyes were in the wrong place, and that's easy to do from a broadcast because you know where their eyes are supposed to be. But it just, overall, there were too many times that it wasn't just, the clock wasn't right in terms of his processing speed. Now, having said that, he got blasted over and over and over again, and eventually that's going to have an impact on how you operate one way or another. But it does feel like there is an element to Joe Flacco where I feel like he's pressing, and he really wants to make plays, and he's trying too hard to make some of them happen. And now, to his credit, there were a couple throws he made and pushed the ball down the field where guys didn't make plays. I mean, the 2 back-to-back drops not really a drop on Fannin, but he couldn't track a very good ball. Would not have been an easy catch, but was still a good ball. And then the Jerry Jeudy thing, where he's unable to corral the ball. That's where you sit there and you feel bad for Joe Flacco, because he's getting drilled and guys aren't making plays that could genuinely change the face of the game. On balance, there's still way too much bad for being what he is, what he needs to be for what this team is right now. And so, I can only go on what I see, which is Joe Flacco looks bad. I'm not going to then say Dylan Gabriel should start based on the fact that I don't know what the hell he's doing. I don't see practice. I don't know meetings or any of these other things. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and go, Dylan Gabriel must start. I have no idea. I can't see anything, but I know he'll be better. That's silly. But if the Browns come out and say this is ultimately where they're going, and by the way, if they come out and say Joe Flacco is going to be the guy, then they may have just done some sort of subterfuge thing to screw with Minnesota and force them to prepare, spend time
for 2 guys. So yeah,
for 2 guys. So that part is at least interesting to me. But Yeah, it's not where it needs to be. There are things that Joe Flacco does not look like the veteran you're supposed to be trusting, or the guy that you need to be able to count on to do the things correctly. Jared Goff, to me, and Jared Goff had far better pass protection, even though the Browns still got after him. I just felt like he was the guy who played like the veteran who did nothing special, but put his team in a position to either do no harm or ultimately do enough and then capitalize on the red zone.
Well, yeah, and Dan Campbell even touched on that in his post-game press conference. He talked about the Amon-Ra touchdown at the end of the game, that was the defense gave a look that they saw earlier in the game. It was a blitz. Goff read it, diagnosed it, changed the play, and threw the touchdown. He literally said, it's so much easier to do my job when I have a high-level quarterback like that can make plays like that happen. You don't find that often. And that's what we hope to have from Flacco. But I want to take this from a different angle because, like, look, at the root of a lot of these quarterback changes and what we want to see is just the fan in us, right? Like, we're tired of watching Joe Flacco. He's 40. We know he's not the future. Show me the kids. Let me see the young guys with potential. Let's see what we have. But realistically, we watch every Sunday. We watch our amazing defensive line take Pro Bowl quarterbacks and reduce them down to guys that just play well enough to win, okay? So why is it that when we play good teams with good defenses and our offensive lines are completely barren, at least at the offensive tackle right now, we act like it's Joe Flacco just, pissing in the front of his pants? Like, that's not the case. Like, I don't understand why we give our defense so much credit. We have confidence that our defense can take any Pro Bowl quarterback and, make him down to something that we can, push around and beat up on the field. But we don't offer that to our quarterback when he's under duress and under the gun the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, and there's certainly an element to this where you just watch the state of the NFL.
Yeah. Nobody's
blocking anybody for the most part. It is awful. Justin Fields yesterday is getting absolutely drilled and looked terrible. That's one example. Or God, watching that Cincinnati Bengals offense was just a train wreck. And this is sort of what a lot of teams are dealing with, where they just cannot protect these guys. And you're seeing these lopsided efforts. Even Bo Nix, took him a while. The game was never really in doubt, but it still felt like they were spinning their wheels quite a bit as they were trying to get these things figured out, because the state of offensive line play in the NFL is terrible, especially compared to the level of freak athlete that is so often on the defense in the front seven. There are too many aliens and not enough guys who know how to play offensive line. So you're naturally lended to this. And then we treat everything, and this is just sort of the nature of the NFL, and this is what they want. You treat everything, like every game, like it's the end of the world. It doesn't matter that, like, to me, just looking at it from a matchup standpoint, Detroit was basically is on the schedule for the Browns. Detroit is basically the worst matchup on the entire schedule.
Yep. To
me, like, Amon St. Brown just jumps out to you, and he does fit, like, coming into the game, I think 57% of his snaps were from the slot, and your immediate reaction is going, he's really good, and he does most of his damage from the slot. This is not good. Aiden Hutchinson, with the state of the offensive line, even if everybody's healthy, that's not a good matchup. He's a seemingly healthy defensive player of the year candidate. And then Penei Sewell is a problem because the broadcast presented as running away from Myles Garrett, which I appreciate as from a propaganda standpoint about Myles Garrett, but it felt to me like it was really just running right behind Penei Sewell when they had success. And those were the guys that, like, I wrote about and said, these were the guys you have to be able to figure out. And ultimately, Penei Sewell and Amon St. Brown didn't kill you, but they did enough. And Aiden Hutchinson did kill you. And so, one, I predicted it would be a multiple score game because I thought this was just a bad situation. But, like, because of the way the Browns are playing, because they're not showing you any progress on offense, it just feels like more of the same, even though you're just sitting there going, the Detroit Lions are a really good team and they deserve credit for being a really good team. But yes, the Browns still have real problems they have to sort out.
Well, let's, in the event of a change, because I think we can both agree that we would not particularly make the change now, but we know the change is coming. This isn't
Right.
something that like we're trying to delay or ignore or anything like that. It's merely getting Dillon Gabriel the best possible chance to get a good, strong week of normal preparation and, put the best foot forward. So having said all that, let's talk about Dillon Gabriel for a minute, because neither one of us know what he's going to look like in a regular NFL season, regular season game, right? So we know that he's a quick processor. He's going to get the ball out quick. We like the movement skills. We like the athleticism. But I think, especially given the state of the offensive line right now that nobody's talking about, Joe Flacco's 6'6", 240. Joe Flacco is a gigantic, he can take this pounding. And even at his age, he can take it. And he's surviving it right now. What's that going to be like for 5'10", maybe 200-pound Dillon Gabriel?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Yeah. Joe Flacco goes down like a tree. It does feel like genuinely effort to take him to the ground. So the state of the offensive line is problematic in that legs are fine. They help, but they do not save you. See Jackson Lamar, who's now out potentially 3 games because everybody caught up to him because they weren't blocking anybody. He wasn't helping himself, but ultimately the problems are caused because their guards are awful. The right tackle is not very good. And Ronnie Stanley's not surprisingly injured.
He's on the back 9. Yeah.
So they're just a mess. And they're going to play Cooper Rush. That team's going to get, I don't even know who they play, but if that team's got any kind of pass rush, they're going to get obliterated, or he is going to get obliterated. They may still win, but he's going to get killed. Dillon Gabriel, the problem I see coming is twofold. One, what Minnesota does on the line in terms of pre-snap stuff. So him being a quick processor may get negated either because they're changing so much their look that he doesn't know what they're doing, or he just throws it and you potentially set yourself up to be he throws a pick 6 or something like that. The other problem you run into is, yes, him being mobile is helpful, but if he can't drop back and just throw from the pocket because he can't see it or because the defensive line is just too far in and they are able to collapse the pocket, then the Browns are going to be basically rolling him out exclusively. That's not difficult to deal with when you know it's going to come. And the fact of the matter is, if you go back to Baker Mayfield, basically after the 2020 season, and some of it during, but they started figuring out what to do, which was when the Browns ran the stretch type stuff, like they'd run left and then roll right or some variation thereof. And given what the Browns are likely to be doing, it's going to be run right, roll left with Dillon Gabriel, just because that's his natural throwing motion, and that's where the Browns want to run anyway. So if you're the Minnesota Vikings or another team, and you're sitting there going, well, they're going to run right and try to go stretch play action to the left, you just send somebody off the backside and blitz that, because at some point you're going to be right, and all of a sudden Dillon Gabriel is going to be right there with the ball, and you're going to obliterate him, because this is what did happen to Baker Mayfield. Or he'd turn around and have to get rid of the ball and just get out of bounds. And there was a feeling at the time, which is one of the reasons that ultimately there were a lot of people really ready to move on from him, is that they didn't feel like he could adjust to that there was no other place to go. Now, ultimately, since he's been with Tampa, he's figured it out. But Dillon Gabriel may not have that luxury as a rookie in his first ever game. It may be you're trying to roll this thing out. So yes, moving in protection sort of gives you some options, but it also sets you up to just have different guys attacking the quarterback in different coverages, sort of trying to trap you into these things. And given what Minnesota does already, they're not afraid to send guys from anywhere. So that sort of naturally sets itself up well to do that. So in other words, Joe Flacco always being in the pocket is very easy to game plan for. It's one of the reasons I was terrified at the prospect of adding Kirk Cousins, because I remember watching him play the Steelers when he was with the Falcons, and the Steelers absolutely obliterated because every pass rush, they knew exactly where he was going to be, which just made it so the defensive coordinator's job so easy. They had an aiming point every single play, and he couldn't move, so he's just waiting there for them. If that's the situation for Dillon Gabriel, the place is slightly different, but they have a general idea of where he's going to end up on most every single play, and they're just going to figure that thing out. So it doesn't really fix your problem. It just changes where the problem occurs. So that's where I get sort of worried. Now, if the offensive line is a little bit better up front and he's able to process and get the ball out, maybe that gives some options, and then they can do the things they want to do where he can, catch, step, throw, and then also get into some of the rollout stuff. Then that gives them some options they don't currently have with Joe Flacco, or, varying up how they're going to boot him and where they're going to put him might help in some way or fashion. But ultimately, the tackles still have to be better than they've been, because if those guys aren't able to block, it's not going to matter. All it's going to do is actually give easier sight lines for those edge rushers.
Yeah. And, as far as this schedule upcoming too, I mean, we talked about Minnesota and the problems they present, right? They're awfully banged up now, which is nice. Then Pittsburgh a week from Sunday. That's a winnable game. I think we can all agree that's a winnable game if they play that cleanly. Maybe. But I'll tell you what. I mean, maybe, obviously.
I'll preview my problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do what the Lions just did, which is just, so we got in this whole conversation. People got some of the conversation was, why aren't they doing more to help with Aiden Hutchinson? Mm-hmm. And the reason for that came down to, ultimately, I think, is because the Lions just said, screw it. We've got all these guys in the box anyway because we're trying to stop the run. They just blitzed them. So if you chip on Aiden Hutchinson with a tight end or receiver, running back, whatever, that doesn't really help you if they're then getting pressure right in the A and the B gaps from the blitz. All you're doing is giving yourself one left option. At that point, you're trying to bet on the idea that, Joe Flacco is supposed to be able to process fast enough where he can see the blitz and find the guys that are open. Now, that didn't happen. Most of that I put on Flacco. I'm sure some of it is on receivers who aren't in the right place in the right time and all that stuff. But because of the poor tackle play, hopefully that gets better. That's what sort of gives me hope with the Steelers. But if that's the thing, I just see them doing what they just did to Carson Wentz, and they're just going to send pressure all day. And yes, Carson Wentz made some plays, but ultimately not enough. And the Steelers got turnovers, sacks, and everything else. That is what scares me about that matchup. Having said that, there's other things on the other side, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But that is the thing that scares me about what I've seen from the Steelers and what I've seen from the Browns.
Well, the reason for me to bring up this upcoming schedule is I feel like, and maybe Stefanski might feel like they owe this to the locker room, right? Because I feel like we all started the season and we were cool with Flacco starting. We had visions of 2023. If they can recapture that magic and the defense is the defense, then maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle and make things happen. With this upcoming schedule, because obviously Minnesota and Pittsburgh are issues, right? But then we've got the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Jets, the Ravens who are reeling, the Raiders, the 49ers who are reeling, the Titans, the Bears, the Bills, the Steelers, and the Bengals. Pete, this is a schedule where we can make something happen.
Yes. It comes down to, look, I genuinely believe they're going to be better, though I understand the skepticism because we're not seeing it from the offense.
Yeah.
But I do think once they get through this patch of the schedule, hopefully the development of these rookies is going to continue. The receivers are going to get better, all this, that, and the other, and hopefully the tackle situation stabilizes itself. They're going to be in a position where they can run off a whole bunch of wins. Now they have to actually do it. They can't spit the bit and doing this thing where now they're going 500 football. They've got to actually really run off a similar, like it should play out if they're serious, if they're going to be a real team, like 2023 did, where the first part of that schedule was awful. They obviously get the big win against the San Francisco 49ers, and they run off a series of wins. They get the big win against Green Bay. They get beat up by Detroit. Okay, like you could see that coming.
Yeah.
But if they could beat Minnesota, even if they split between Minnesota and Pittsburgh, and then they can beat Miami, they can beat New England, they can beat the Jets. Like
right
all
there,
of a sudden,
they're 500 team right there. Just
we're
like
right
that.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, don't get me wrong. The pressure's on them to do these things, but like the thing I can't get over, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but like the defense has played some really, really good offenses.
Yeah.
At some point, they are going to play an offense that is just terrible, and they are going to absolutely obliterate them. And I'm hoping we're going to get a repeat of 2021 Chicago Bears Justin Fields rookie year, where just
Where you feel
historic
bad.
beating.
You feel bad in between plays.
And you know what game I want that to happen with? The San Francisco 49ers, because screw Kyle Shanahan. I hate Kyle Shanahan with the passion of 1,000 suns because Kyle Shanahan cannot help himself but see an injured quarterback and go, I've got to start him. I've got to start the injured quarterback. He did it for Robert Griffin III. He did it with what other quarterback did he have in San Francisco where he did?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Did it with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's now done it with his quarterback now, when he could have just rolled with Mac Jones, who was healthy, because now Brock Purdy is probably going to be out on Thursday. So all they did was literally say, "Screw me," and we're going to dump a game to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We had no business losing.
Yep. Agreed completely. I maintain Mac Jones revenge game. San Francisco wins that walking away. Either way. All right. Well, let's move over. Let's move over to the running back position. All right. Now we're going to talk plenty about Quinshon Judkins. I feel like this is everybody's new favorite player on offense. But man, is it time to be worried about Dylan Sampson, or is it just a young kid who needs to get a little bit stronger in the weight room that doesn't have all the nuances down, and that's why we see Jerome Ford in big situations?
Jerome Ford is entirely a product of pass protection, and people should get off his back given what he just did to Aiden Hutchinson. He killed that man.
Yes, he did.
He killed him. It was that body check was unbelievable. He just took him out, and obviously hit him in the ribs enough that it took him a minute to get off the field. He absolutely obliterated him. Dylan Sampson's 200 pounds. Like, I don't think weight room is going to fix this in terms of pass protection, and you are now. At least you have been in a situation where you were playing it. Sometimes it felt like three linemen. So you couldn't afford, if you put Dylan Sampson in the backfield at that point, you are telling the defense he's either getting the ball, it's play action, or he's running a route. So what the Browns end up doing then is either shifting him into an empty formation or just lining up in an empty formation. So there's no secret. So I think that is more the situation with Dylan Sampson. He cannot contribute too much as a pass protector, and the Browns' pass protection isn't good enough. So Jerome Ford has to come in there, and thankfully he does, because he's actually doing a pretty good job in pass protection. It just people get irritated because he doesn't do much as a ball carrier, but he's doing a hell of a job in that. Having said that, if Cam Robinson can deliver even mediocre tackle play, if Jack Conklin can get back, or Cornelius Lucas just plays against lesser competition, that may allow them to do more with Dylan Sampson. Now, the other part about this equation just comes down to snaps.
Yeah,
the Browns aren't
getting
enough snaps. Mm-hmm. And by virtue, Quinshon Judkins is not getting overworked. They literally don't have the ball enough to overwork him at this point. So they just need to be able on the field more. That's part of it. They need to sort of get to the point where they are with Quinshon Judkins, who right now is basically the offense.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to pass protect better so they aren't forced to live in a world where Jerome Ford has to come on the field and basically telegraph what's happening. I mean, the one time Jerome Ford got the ball, it was on a draw play because the Browns were basically trying to catch the defense thinking, oh, of course it's pass. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can't catch him with a draw, and it went nowhere. But Jerome Ford is difficult to get rid of right now, or even just in terms of snaps, because he is so good right now in terms of pass protection.
So this is now the third week that Judkins was the feature of the offense, the only thing that was consistent on the offense. And even with the defense pinning their ears back and crushing Flacco and having almost no passing game to worry about, he was still able to make plays, man. He's explosive. He's got sneaky good vision. He's way quicker than I gave him credit for. I thought he was a bit of a bruiser, but man, he's got great feet. He looks like the real deal, Pete. He looks very, very good, and every bit worth that 36 overall pick.
So he surprised me with the vision. When the Browns initially plugged him in the game, a lot of what he was running was gap. That's easy to do. It just says, here's the hole, run through it. The last 2 weeks, and particularly against Detroit, they're using more zone stuff. And in particular, they used Harold Fannin as a fullback and then sort of a wing and an insert. And you kept seeing situations where, Harold Fannin isn't like some dominating blocker, but he sort of sets an angle that causes issues for the one, gives Quinshon Judkins a read and sort of a lay of the land. And then you saw in situations where the Detroit Lions defense was like keying on Fannin. So then all of a sudden the Browns used that to their advantage on a couple of plays where they like designed it to have a natural cutback. But it also seemed like there were a couple where Quinshon Judkins just decided, I'm going to cut this back. And all of a sudden he had a nice little wall to run behind to steal like 7 or 8 yards the other way. And the reason I say he surprises me, he ran a whole lot of zone at Ole Miss. He never did anything like that. It was not, I mean, it's not to say he couldn't see. It's just he largely got exactly what he was blocked for, maximized it to his ability, and then his physical talent sort of took over. But I'm seeing stuff that I have not seen him do in college. He never did anything like this at Ohio State either because there was so much gap and he's just going to where they wanted to run him off tackle. But there are a couple cutback runs where I'm sort of like, wait a minute, does he have more potential to grow into the NFL than I thought he did, given that, you generally with these guys who've played as many snaps as a guy like he has, they just are what they are. There's not like much more to go. And he's at least opened the possibility for me that maybe there is more growth, that he can be more special than I thought he could be based on his ability to sort of see some of the, Nick Chubb always got a ton of credit for his vision. Part of what Nick Chubb did at a really, really high level is he studied his ass off and he could anticipate where guys were coming from and knew where his answers were going to be. If Quinshon Judkins can do that, I'm not saying he's going to be Nick Chubb, but I think it opens the door for him to be more than just a very good running back, which he seems to be in terms of he maximizes the carry. He fights for every single yard. Guys already seem to hate tackling him. He's got speed and quickness. But if he has that extra component, if that becomes a thing for him and that becomes part of this offense, I think it opens – I think the possibility becomes he becomes potentially a Pro Bowl type player. Who knows? I mean, we'll see. Nick Chubb had Hall of Fame talent. I don't anticipate that. But at the same time, I'm just curious to see where Quinshon can take this.
Yeah. And look, I'm certainly not going to say he has Hall of Fame talent. I feel like he has talent that a Hall of Fame work ethic could elevate him to those things. But you think about it, this was the number one recruit in his high school class. He's been a stud every step of the way. Every step of the way, he's been a physical stud, and he's produced on the field. I mean, it's all kind of fallen in line for this kid, and it's exciting to see. And the skill set too, because they don't use him a lot on third down. Obviously, it's no different than Dylan Sampson with the pass protection stuff. But you can see the skills as a receiver. Like
yes, you can. Yes, you can.
All day long.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the nice little screen underneath where and it wasn't a great pass. I mean, it wasn't bad or anything, but it did force him to sort of turn and back, open up his hips a little bit to frame the ball, as opposed to compare that to was it Bo Nix who tried to throw to his running back Harvey and threw it to him like he was a receiver, asking him to outstretch. Like, that's not realistic. Again, I don't know just how good Quinshon Judkins could be, but he's been a competent receiver, certainly at Ohio State, not as much as Ole Miss, just because he was the guy. But that was something at Ohio State, and then you saw it in this game where he catches that little screen and just is able to take off in his change of direction. I'm hoping we get to a point where he can do more in terms of running routes and getting down the field and doing some more of the things you saw him do at Ohio State. Now that comes down to they've got to get to a point where the offensive protection is good enough and they can run, Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins both to be able to create some of those opportunities where it makes more sense to do that.
All right. Well, let's shuffle over to the wide receiver position, right? So obviously, tough game. We lost two guys. We lost DeAndre Carter. We lost Cedric Tillman. Jerry Jeudy had another big drop. That's all people are going to focus on. So we got to fill the void by the injured Cedric Tillman now, okay? And you suggested maybe moving Harold Fannin, bits and pieces out there. We talked about Jamari Thrash. We haven't really talked about Isaiah Bond because I feel like we both know that he's not quite ready for a starting role just yet. But I got to tell you, man, this kid's been making plays. He made a couple of really nice catches this past weekend against Detroit, leaving his feet. I'm getting very, very intrigued with what he's going to be able to offer in the future. What do you think about Bond and where he's at right now, and how does he factor into maybe filling Tillman's shoes?
Well, I mean, the thing is, one, he created the most explosive play the Browns had all day when he went up and caught that ball down the right sideline.
Mm-hmm.
He, obviously they went from touch guy to now they're letting him run routes and cause problems, and his speed can stretch the field. And if they can protect long enough, they should be able to exploit that more. And they tried with both the play he did make. The area he's got to continue to grow is Joe Flacco tried to go right back to him down the left sideline, and he gave up on the play. Mm-hmm. And Amik Robertson just dropped the ball. Otherwise, that would have been a uncontested interception. And you saw it if you watched the broadcast, they showed Joe Flacco just glare at him.
Oh yeah,
because you're in Joe Flacco's head. He's like, "Listen, man, I'm trying to give you a shot. And you're selling me out by not going for it." So one, he's a rookie. Hopefully, we don't have to do this over and over and over again. Hopefully, it's the one mistake is enough to figure this out. But to your point, all that keeps happening is there's more to like about what Isaiah Bond can offer this team, and that becomes super important given what they have elsewhere. Other than him, Jerry Jeudy is the only other pure speed threat they have at wide receiver. It's not to say other guys can't get down the field and run fast or anything. It's just he's the guy who has potentially game-breaking speed. He's the guy who can naturally just force the defense to play back and create space underneath. And if they can protect long enough to take advantage of that, that could open some things up. So I like the fact that Isaiah, I will say I'm impressed by how fast Isaiah Bond is learning and picking things up. He's been here about 20 minutes, and he is clearly impressing the team with his work ethic and his ability to get out there, line up correctly, do what he's supposed to do enough. They keep trusting him, and they keep putting more on his plate. Hopefully that continues, and they can take the next step.
Right. So Tillman's injury. Well, Tillman's on IR. So what is the stint for IR? Is it 4 weeks or 5 weeks at a minute?
Four games.
4 games.
4 weeks. Yeah. And then we'll see where we're at. Obviously, hamstring, frustrating. He's dealt with them before, and they're one of those things that can just linger, and you never know. I think it's probably smart that the Browns said, "Screw it, we're just going to do this," then sort of let it hang around. But I think Cedric Tillman certainly has a role in this team and certainly can offer things. Right now, he's other than Jerry Jeudy, he's their best route runner. Clearly, he's learned a lot in that capacity. So that part sucks. Now, the part if let's say it is Joe Flacco still starting, it's going to force him to look at other guys. Like Jamari Thrash is the one that stands out. He's looked at him, I think, twice all season, and one of them was on the drive to get the field goal against the Packers. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where you don't know if Jamari Thrash isn't doing what he's supposed to do, or if the quarterback just doesn't trust him and doesn't look his way. For example, if Dylan Gabriel goes in there, he might throw Jamari Thrash a ton because that's the guy he's been repping with. And it sort of takes you back to, again, using Baker Mayfield as an example. Baker Mayfield in 2018 didn't rep with the ones at all. And then he came in. So who's the guy he kept throwing to?
Hollywood Higgins, baby.
Because that's the guy he was repping with all summer. So, again, super small sample size. Don't know how much you can really bank on this, but Dylan Gabriel's first pass, he went right to Jamari Thrash. So that at least maybe this forces Joe Flacco to look at some other guys. Obviously, it could also just have the impact of he's just going to look to Fannin even more because that seems to be the guy he trusts the most right now. But they need to get more weapons involved. They need to get more development from those guys in general.
We'll do a quick pivot over to tight ends now. I'm curious as to your take on David Njoku. And I mean, maybe I overrate David Njoku. I think Njoku's fantastic. I'm a little surprised that they're not forcing more feeds his way. And again, I know it's the same thing with Dylan Sampson. There's only so many reps because they're not moving the ball consistently. They're not sustaining drives. So it's like people are going to get limited targets, limited, whatever. But I'm just curious as to what your take would be on Njoku and what he's done so far this season.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's unclear because on the one hand, defenses are likely going to shift their attention to him. They're going to try to take him away because he can be a game-breaking presence. On the other hand, the thing that has always sort of hurt Njoku a little bit is he's very linear. He plays the game largely in straight lines, which can make it sort of not easy to cover him, but just sort of makes it so you sort of have an idea of what he's going to do on a given play. Harold Fannon's the opposite, where he's all change of direction and problematic things that can sort of create issues for David Njoku. Largely wins on the fact that he is bigger and stronger and then just fast. But if you're in position, and it can sort of take him away. So, this is another situation where the Browns just need to be successful, have more plays that work, have more drives that sustain, because if you can force the defense to try to take away other things or just be more honest in general, then they're not going to be able to clamp down on David Njoku, and then it hopefully allows him to go off similar to the way he did in 2023.
Mm-hmm. And now, Fannon's been a really pleasant surprise. I think we were all excited about him coming into the season because of the career of BG and just the run after catch potential, all that stuff. But the way they focused him and featured him and the way, you touched on it earlier, Flacco looks for him. Flacco almost locks in on him sometimes.
Certainly seems like that. In this game, he only had 2 catches for 24 yards, and it always feels like more because he took, 3rd and 12. He catches a ball, turns around and fights 2 guys for 5 yards. And it's frustrating because you end up on 4th and 1.
Yeah.
If they're in a different area of the field, they'd go for it because he does that. He did the same thing in the Packers game where he took on seemingly 3 tacklers to fight for a first down and extended drive, which ended up being critical for them to win that game. He, like I said, with Quinton Judkins, he and Harold Fannin are tone setters to me in the way they fight for everything. They play the way, like if you're just sort of like trying to come up with how you'd want your players to play on offense, and you sort of envision, what is a Cleveland Browns offensive player supposed to look like? It's the way these guys are playing. And obviously David Njoku's had that reputation for a while.
Oh, yeah.
The ability to just drag multiple defenders and fight for yards. But people hate tackling these guys. Harold Fannin he never quits. And it's part of the reason I think the Browns are willing to just keep betting on him, because he plays the way they want him to play. They'd want anyone to play. Any team would want anyone to play. So you're going to keep giving him chances. It's weird because he's averaging 40 yards a game and feels like he's doing far more than that, in part because what he does to a defense and then the effort he does on everything else. He's not a good blocker, but he gives everything he has, and hopefully we'll eventually figure it out. And it comes down to how you deploy him and the things you're asking him to do that hopefully he can get better at. He's not going to grow and be 6'5" and have super long arms and be able to do those things, but he will give you what he's got. And I'd like to see him in more situations where, particularly with Dylan Sampson, or if they get better tackle play with Quinton Judkins, that they can run him off tackle and then have, Fannin be able to play from space and take out a backer or a safety from that standpoint, because I think those are the ways he's going to win that can really open this thing up. But, in terms of perimeter blocking, I think he's going to, if they do what I suggested and say, put him at X, he's going to kill corners theoretically in terms of being able to block. So look, it's one of those things where for all the things that are really frustrating on offense, Fannin, Quinton Judkins in the running game and the things they're getting better at and that are genuinely fun and exciting to watch. Just you need so much more to go right for this thing to get on track.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the thing with Fannin too, in terms of traditional inline tight end, he's not prototype size. You're right. He's a little smaller for a tight end is concerned, but he's still 6'3", 245. So you get him on the edge, you get him in the open field with defensive backs, he's going to run through them all day long. It's a nice little wrinkle that he's brought to the offense now. All right, so let's shuffle over to the offensive line. We made the trade for Cam Robinson, which I personally, I'm pretty thrilled with that. In terms of getting a tackle mid-season, I'm flatly thrilled that they were able, A, for the price, and B, the player. Cam Robinson can play at the NFL level. This is a good pickup.
I'm absolutely blown away by the price. I was waiting to see the official, because I was waiting. They said late round picks. I was waiting for it to be like swapping a 4th round pick for a 7th round pick or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't believe my reaction is, what's the catch?
Yeah.
Because you traded a 6th for a 7th in 2027. You're only going to pay him $2.5 million for the rest of the season. One, and I did see some of this. Like, I understand that the Houston Texans have Ariante Ursary, but what the hell are you doing? Why would you trade this? If he grabs at his ankle, you are boned again. And you're the Houston Texans. You're not blocking anybody anyway. Your offensive line is genuinely a train wreck. So that's the first thing. The other thing that jumps out at me, one, he's not saving the world. If mediocre is what he gives you, that's an upgrade.
That's a huge upgrade.
Prototypical size. He's 6'6", 335, and he has real talent. The problem is he will do some Jed Wills things. Whatever it is about Alabama that Nick Saban's, it seemed to suck the life out of some of these kids.
Yeah.
And just once you got out of Alabama, you had nothing left in terms of love for the game. When he wants to, he can be a very good player. There are just times he's going to Jed Wills it, and you're going to be annoyed with him. Having said that, if I look for the framework of what Minnesota did with him, they lose Christian Darrisaw for the season. They go out and get him. He absolutely helped them. He absolutely made their situation better. He was able to help them sort of get to the playoffs and ultimately get to where they get into a position where Sam Darnold could absolutely spit the bit and throw the season away. Yeah. That would be a great scenario for the Browns to somehow get in the playoffs and let the quarterback throw the thing away. But the other thing with Cam Robinson is you're paying him $2.5 million for the rest of the year. He's going to turn 30 in a week and a half. Mm-hmm. You are in a situation where all 5 your linemen for next year, line spots for next year, are in flux. I would love nothing more than Luke Whippler to be able to say, the Browns to be able to go, Luke Whippler's going to be our starting center. That leaves 4 spots. Mm-hmm. If Cam Robinson plays well, I don't assume he's going to be like, yeah, I'm good with football at this point. I assume he's going to be angling for another contract. If you're the Browns and he plays well enough, don't you just immediately turn to him and go, hey, why don't you just sign and stay here? Because now I have to your point, and this is all I expect him to be, a professional level lineman who's not too old. He can play. It allows you to do what the Houston Texans actually did with him, which was you acquired him. Then you drafted a young offensive tackle, in their case, Ursary, in the 2nd round. If Ursary wasn't ready to go, you had a guy who could play, and you'd be okay. But Ursary got to a point where they were comfortable putting him in, and then they, I would have kept the depth, but they decided we're going to trade him for a 6th round pick in 2 years. Yeah. Again, I don't know if there's like a weird penance thing going on with the Houston Texans, but whatever. So if you ultimately trade a 6th round pick for a 7th round pick in 2 years, and then you get another season of capable veteran, even if he's a backup, a competent backup football player on a line that has experienced all kinds of problems, I think that's a dream scenario for you to sort of turn this thing over and be able to, because one of the things, somewhere on this line, you're going to have to find somebody or somebodies that are going to be able to stopgap for a year as you try to reorient this thing and get much younger. Even if let's say Dylan Gabriel absolutely lights it up and they go, this is our guy. Mm-hmm. You could still see them use 2 or 3 of their first 4 picks on offensive linemen and still have things to address. So like, you're not likely going to be in a situation where all these guys can step in and start right away. It's probably not realistic. So have an insurance policy who can play at this level. So I see nothing but upside, and I still sit here and go, what's the catch? Like, does he have some virulent disease that he's going to pass on to the rest of the team? Like, I don't understand this trade from Houston's standpoint, unless he's just like a giant pain in the ass, and they said, we just got to get rid of him.
I mean, yeah, but I can't imagine that's the scenario, because he's been in the league a long time. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, he's not a perfect player, but I don't understand. Like, nobody has tackle depth. Nobody does. Everybody wants it. How the hell do you give away your tackle depth for that price? For 2 years, a late round flyer 2 years from now. That's insane to me.
Yeah, it genuinely felt like if they waited till the trade deadline, somebody was going to do something stupid. And here's the thing, like, the Browns were absolutely desperate. They were scrambling to get this thing. And somehow the Houston Texans weren't able to capitalize on this, which all the credit in the world to Andrew Berry. If he gave up a higher pick for Cam Robinson, no one would have blinked.
No.
He got a great deal. Now, in 2 years from now, when they're down, they traded down a round, maybe somebody will be upset about it, but like, I cannot believe the deal is, because the Browns are genuinely desperate at this stage for offensive tackle help. And the Houston Texans are like, yeah, just take him.
Yeah. Well, so you hit on it a little bit with the fact that we're going to need a whole new line next year, right? The only people under contract are Whippler, DeWand, and Zinter. Everybody else is up in the air at the moment.
Conklin's still under contract. It's just a question mark as to whether he's going to be here.
Okay. I thought when they reworked his deal in the offseason, it basically amounted to this was like they shaved a year off and this was the last year. But it
might be for some reason. I thought they basically just changed it to. But you could be right. Either way, they're looking for all options at this point. They got to get younger.
Yeah, and like you said, if you can get Cam Robinson
and KT Levinson is under contract for 2 years,
which is nice. But the whole thing with Robinson, you get him in your building, you get to feel it out for a year, and you're absolutely right, man. If he can play, jump on him. Offer him the same 1 year deal that you gave Cornelius. Well, we gave Lucas 11.5.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get that. I mean, Cam Robinson is a guy who just gets $12 million. That's just sort of how it works. Yeah. Which, again, if you're able to draft a bunch of guys, and you have all these contracts falling off, that's fine. You're gonna be happy with that. I mean, that's just sort of the going rate for a tackle. I have no problem with that as an insurance policy. Cornelius Lucas, 35 years old. I love the deal. I'm thrilled with that deal, but I suspect you're going to get more. And look, it may be a situation where in order to get the deal done, if the Browns are really happy with him, look, they just say, "Here, sign an extension. What's it going to take to get you for another year?" And that may be the number, but I would assume it's going to be north of 10 million. And again, I'm fine with that. That's just sort of the going rate for a tackle. And if he's going to be competent and give you that, great. I mean, the Houston Texans, I think, are on the hook for like 10.75 or 12, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's scoot over to the defense. Have maybe something a little more fun to talk about. So obviously, it was much like week 2 with Baltimore, right? The defense largely held their own and held the Lions back from what they usually do, but given field position and some breaks in the special teams, they were just up against it, and Detroit ultimately just started making plays. So for the defensive line, a little disappointing not to notch a single sack. We definitely got to Goff. We hit him. We roughed him up. We sped up the process and everything like that, but nobody got home.
Nope, that's not true.
What's that?
He did get home. Isaiah McGuire beat the hell out of Taylor Decker. Unfortunately, it was a holding penalty on Denzel.
Yes. Well, in the grand scheme of things, nobody got credit for getting home. So I personally, disappointing game all the way around, but this was, like you said, man, this was the matchup on the schedule. This was the best offensive line they're going to face, probably the best top-to-bottom team they're going to face all year, save maybe Buffalo, but even Buffalo's defense,
I'll take Detroit over Buffalo.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. Obviously, Jared Goff can't compare to
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. But look, my hot take is I think the Buffalo Bills are ultimately fraudulent. I hate their defense. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to the fact that they've got, and granted, some of this is guys that are hurt. Their first round pick, obviously, their first round corner they picked has been on injured reserve, who is fast.
Yeah.
But like what they've been trotting out there, and this was on display against the Ravens, which I thought was really problematic, is you had slow DBs and then super undersized linebackers. That combination was really strange to me, and it was the absolute worst thing to deal with a guy like Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be a bigger problem as the season wears on. Obviously, if they get those draft picks on the field and they play well, that could change things. But Khalil Shakir is great. I loved him. I wanted to draft him. They're still not a primary target where you're going to sit here and go, it's crunch time. He's going to get me a play. Maybe it's Shakir. But other than that, it's a bunch of guys that you're sort of like, And then it comes down to Josh Allen. Now, James Cook is very good. Their offensive line is good. Those things are critical. But I think at some point, when it gets to the postseason, I think they'll cruise. They could win 14 games, and I wouldn't blink. But I think when they get to the playoffs, the issues that roster has are going to ultimately limit how far they can go. We'll see if I'm wrong. But if you're just asking me on a roster standpoint, and obviously Detroit still has to get healthy, and they just lost 2 corners to injury against the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
But I think their roster design is significantly better for sustaining. I think the Lions are a team, again, injuries can impact this, and they just keep finding ways to get hurt. I think they're a team that's going to gain steam over the course of the year. Now, having said that, to me, on the schedule, nobody matched up better against the Browns defense than the Lions offense. Amon St. Brown, problematic matchup. Penei Sewell, problematic matchup. And the running game, problematic enough because they could block. They had, to me, the 2 offensive lines that stood out to me heading into the season. Every game you were going to sit there and go, Browns defensive line is going to just cook these guys. The 2 offensive lines that stood out to me were Detroit and Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's offensive lines have not been healthy at all.
Yeah.
They started the season without Christian Darrisaw. Now Darrisaw is back, and now they may be down 3 linemen when the Browns play them. I'm good with that. I'm good with that protecting Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But healthy, Ryan Kelly, Will Freeze, Donovan Jackson, Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill is a really good group.
Yeah.
So you could sit there and say, I think they can do a reasonable job protecting J.J. McCarthy if that was healthy, or Carson Wentz. But the Lions had their guys, and they were more competitive. Now, Amon St. Brown got some plays, but he didn't break their backs. I was surprised in that I thought the Browns might say, look, we're going to dedicate. I thought Greg Newsome just would follow around, or I should say I thought that might happen. Greg Newsome would just follow around Amon St. Brown. I at least raised the possibility that they might start out with their normal stuff and see if that they wouldn't just start with that and see how it went.
Yeah.
They never changed. They went with their dudes and just played it straight. And I was blown away by that, not only because they did it, but because it worked. Say what you will. Yes, the Lions made some plays. They're going to make some plays. That's But and granted, you can sort of make the argument that they took their foot off the gas and it might limit ultimately the statistical production. Jared Goff threw for 168 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Their running game got 109, which is the most the Browns have given up this year. But it wasn't like – and Jahmyr Gibbs did have an explosive play. They had 3 explosive receiving plays. Yep. But, like, the Lions had to work their asses off to get what they got for the most part. There were a couple of breakdowns and
Pete, did I lose you, brother? Oh,
I'm here. Did I flicker out?
Yeah. Sorry, it was kind of froze up for a second. So one thing that I would say, I'm sorry, finish your thought.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I thought they did an excellent job bottling up the running game. I feel like Jahmyr Gibbs is just a rare cat that has that power and explosive, like, next level quickness and burst that allowed him to make those plays. I feel like 99.9% of the running backs in the league would have been bottled up in a few of those cases where he just had that extra gear, hit the corner, and was able to make something happen.
That's certainly an element to it. I think the crack toss thing or whatever they got him on the outside was just really well done, really well designed, really well executed. They were able to pin Isaiah McGuire. They had a crack block, take out the second level defender, and at that point, Jahmyr Gibbs is off and running. They just got the Browns on that play. But that's why I say Penei Sewell is a problem, because he's just that guy that can do those things. So, look, again, they got a couple plays, but like in the grand scheme of things, they got 4 explosive plays. It's not like they got 20 or whatever it was. You're going to see in some of these games. It's not like the Browns went off. And I imagine at some point the Browns are going to just get boat raced by somebody. They will play like crap, or somebody will be have a series of errors that allows a team to just go off. But if I just look at the schedule the rest of the way, I don't see a team that can do what Detroit did just from a talent standpoint the rest of the way. So that gives me reason to believe that this team is going to just get better and better and better. Obviously staying healthy is key, and hopefully they're going to keep growing because they have so many young players. But Detroit just does a lot of things that I think are problematic. Their size up front is not a great matchup for the Browns. So that part of it. So if you're asking me, Jim Schwartz is going to have things he wants to correct and all that, and there's certainly things I can poke at. But overall, I'm still going to take that performance and be happy with it.
Yeah, well, and at the end of the day, we're in a different position than the Detroit Lions are. This is a team that was on the cusp of a Super Bowl a year ago. It was one of the best regular season teams in the league without question. And that's what their expectations are. That's where they're at right now. That's a well-oiled machine that has its eyes on a championship. It's not trying to figure out who your quarterback's going to be or trying to figure out what offensive tackles can keep your quarterback. I mean, it's two different places in time for these organizations, So it's like, I'm with you. I'm okay with the defense playing that way because I know if the offense would have done anything, it would have been a different game. It's next to impossible to expect, regardless of how good the defense is, you're not going to hold down an offense that talented for the entirety of a game when you get no help. It's just not going to happen.
Right. I mean, Detroit's one of the teams where we talk about surpassing 20 points. Detroit is a team where you have to score at least 20. There's no getting around that. You might have to score 30. They're just that good.
I think they've got 10 straight games of 30 points.
Yeah, I mean, they're just good. And would be viewed even more that way had they not flamed out in the playoffs the way they did. I mean, I mentioned this before. It reminded me of the Browns in 2023, where by the end of the year, and both teams looked like the car from Tommy Boy by the end of the movie. Like you're just missing all these parts, and you just ran out of guys. So if Detroit can sort of muddle their way through, get some of these guys back healthy, they're going to be really good. And seemingly, whatever they might have lost with Ben Johnson and the Jets head coach, they seemingly have been able to muddle through. They lost like 5 assistants, and they seem to be okay.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, there's still John Morton had the, bulletin board material saying they haven't seen a running game like ours. I like that little attitude. I agree with you. Like everybody hit the alarms on week 1 when Green Bay tattooed them. But ever since then, Detroit might be the best team in football from what we've seen.
Yeah, and they get to go play Cincinnati, so they'll be fine.
All right, well, let's shuffle over to our linebackers. And again, the whole defense is viewed through kind of a different lens because with the lack of production on offense, it's really tough for these guys to hold up. But I would say overall, I mean, Devin Bush and Carson Schlesinger, again, had a couple of good games. They were active. They flew around the field.
So in watching that game, I thought Jack Campbell sort of helped to contextualize where I think Carson Schlesinger is right now as a linebacker. Mm-hmm. Jack Campbell is in his 3rd year. He's a good player, smart, obviously annoyingly smart in the one screen he sniffed out. He just does a lot of things where you just sort of, in a lot of ways, I think Carson Schlesinger is. He's in the right place at the right time and does his job. I think Carson Schlesinger might offer more in coverage than Jack Campbell does, but they're both great athletes. Jack Campbell obviously went in the 1st round. Frankly, I thought he'd go where Schlesinger went in that draft. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, I think as a rookie, and Jack Campbell was not this good as a rookie, nowhere near. In fact, he was like their 4th linebacker for most of that season. But I do think Carson Schlesinger is like there. And obviously some of this comes down to situation. He's put in a dream scenario, but he has made the most of it in terms of just understanding where he's supposed to be. Another game where he's rock solid in terms of what he's doing. There are a couple of plays, just his pursuit angle was critical. Mm-hmm. And I think he's the guy who tracked down that Jahmyr Gibbs run that went for 24. Yep. I just continue to be blown away by what he does. Devin Bush continues to be very good, very solid. And it just, the front 7 has been really impressive. They don't make a ton of mistakes. The linebackers cover well for when the defensive line gets a little bit too greedy, but fortunately the defensive line has been a little bit more realistic this year. But yeah, those two combined are just really setting the tone for everything else on that side of the ball.
Right. Now, how about the secondary? How'd you feel like they hung in? And again, it's a tough game to really, praise or critique, but still.
Well, I'm happy with largely the corner play. Like you're going against St. Brown. You're going against Jameson Williams. Yeah, at points you had corners covering their tight end, You have Isaac Tesla, who really doesn't do much yet, but he's just a big body that can run fast. You still have to cover him. Yeah. They just have a lot of different things that they're throwing at you, and by and large, the corners are pretty good. I continue to be happy with what I see from Greg Newsome. But you play man coverage, you're occasionally going to give up some plays. I don't get too upset about that. The leading receiver for the Lions had 70. It's not like they created a ton of plays. Yeah, they're going to complete passes and do some other things. But my biggest takeaway from this game is, look, I think there's an element to this where when you are this good on defense, you make lesser players potentially better than they otherwise might be. I would say it's the same for the offense, and I think that's working in the inverse right now for the Browns. But so I don't know if Miles Harden is quite as good as he played in that game, but I was pretty happy with what I saw from him. And there were multiple occasions where, Miles Harden is ranked step for step with a guy like Jameson Williams, pressed him off the line, carried him, went with him, and there was no safety help over the top. It was just him, and he's right there. And
he was in his hip.
There were a couple bad angles he took. The second touchdown, he took a poor angle, went inside out as opposed to outside in when he had inside help. But he does not play scared. He trusts his technique, and he just goes with it. And I really liked him coming out of college because he plays with sort of a chip on his shoulder, but he doesn't play like a guy who ever questions if he's belongs in this league and just goes. And I find his attitude and the way he plays infectious. I'm assuming it's similar with Jim Schwartz because he just competes. He's physical and he competes, and you can do it. And he's in the right leverages. He's where he's supposed to be largely, and then the rest is just do your job. I have to assume that they're just going to keep rolling with him because he's not giving them a reason not to. Yeah. And you would have thought that if the Lions, and maybe this would have happened over the course of the game, they would have found him in more matchups against Amon-Ra St. Brown or James Williams. I mean, they tried, but I thought he was up to the challenge in this week. And I have to say, he's another guy that looks like he's going to fit in, and hopefully he can grow into own that role. We'll see, but I've been happy with him in back-to-back weeks. And this is a guy you picked in the 7th round that's potentially filling in a big job.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I feel like he's been trending in the right direction. He's been playing better and better. And everybody had to be impressed with, A, that he had the stones to step up on the line and press Jameson Williams, but B, that he was in his hip the whole time. It was great coverage. It was a great play. And that's it. This is a young kid who doesn't have a ton of reps. So getting all of this playing time and ascending with each game it's nice. It's a pleasant surprise. Now, if you don't mind, the Cam Mitchell thing kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Now, is that an injury type of issue, or is that just
I think they're playing the odds on this ultimately in waiving him.
Yeah.
One, they have other things they have to do, but I think there's a part of this where they're basically they've apparently decided that if somebody were to claim him, they're not going to be brokenhearted enough. But I think they're pretty confident they're going to get him back on the practice squad. And I hope they do. I know there are any number of people who just decided they are done with Cam Mitchell. Yeah. Welcome to playing corner. It's hard. And every mistake you make is amplified to the nth degree.
Pedestal.
But he plays man coverage. That is what he is. Certainly that fits what Jim Schwartz wants to do. So that may be ultimately another reason why he could end up being back on the practice squad. So that is ultimately the simplest reasoning I can come up with it. And look, the fact that Miles Harden, that may be a further indication that they're happy with Miles Harden.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Well, we've got Minnesota coming up this week, and we always like to whip around the AFC North and kind of talk about all that stuff. So we can kind of kill two birds with one stone here. So this week's the game in Ireland, the Vikings and the Steelers. What are the quick takeaways from that Vikings contest? And I mean, on the surface, I know you're going to point to the pressure that Pittsburgh put on Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, they just kept sending more and more guys at him. The Vikings couldn't block them, and it led to turnovers. It led to, turnover that was called back. That would have been a touchdown. They just overwhelmed him. Now, having said that, the Browns will not see Jalen Ramsey, which I do not hate because I honestly, once you get past the first level, he's the best player on their defense right now.
Yep.
So that part is useful. The other thing that sort of stood out to me from that game was it's the first time that the Pittsburgh Steelers have gotten to run the ball effectively. And it comes down to how they did it and what I think the Browns might do, which is you put 7 guys on the line of scrimmage and just say, try and stop us. The bottom line is, and if they're going with Dylan Gabriel, this becomes even more logical, but I don't care if they have Joe Flacco or not. All the pre-snap motion that the defense does, trying to fool you into thinking they're doing all these other things and disguise their coverages, doesn't matter if you just turn around and hand the ball off and you have 7 guys up front saying, we're coming at you. Like, you want to dance around and be tired before we come after you? Great. So I do think there's something where the Browns can look at that game tape and just be like, we can do this. We brought in Cam Robinson. We brought in Thayer Mumford. We brought in, hopefully Jack Conklin's going to be healthy and able to play this week. KT Levinston can certainly be a jumbo extra guy. They've got David Njoku. They've got Harold Fannin. They've got Aiden Huntington. They've got Tevin Jenkins. They can throw guys on the line of scrimmage and get this team big and hand the ball to Quinshon Judkins. I mean, the bottom line is Judkins is better right now than, to me, anyone that's on the Steelers' backfield. Gainwell's still their best rusher right now.
Oh, yeah.
So on the one hand, I sort of look at this and go, one, it's annoying that the Steelers won, but 2, that they may have just given the Browns the best possible blueprint for how to sort of deal with this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you said, Minnesota's reeling with these injuries. Obviously, they're down J.J. McCarthy. They're down, three of the 5 starters, right? O'Neal's out, the center's out, and Darrisaw's out?
Well, Brian Kelly's at least in the protocol.
Okay.
It's one of those where who knows, but
yeah,
I would guess he won't be available, but you never know. Brian O'Neill, they've already said out. I don't know that they've officially ruled out Donovan Jackson, but when he got hurt, they were saying multiple week injury, so I think he's going to be out. So you got Christian Darrisaw back, you've got Will Freeze, and then you have potentially 3 backups against what is clearly right now the best defensive line in football. So Darrisaw is very, very good. So you're just probably going to flip Myles Garrett over to whoever the hell's in at right tackle and just let Malik Collins destroy who's ever on the interior. I mean, and it's Carson Wentz again. So he's not particularly mobile. Yes, every so often, there were a couple times he made a great anticipatory throw that got the Steelers in a bad spot and threw a touchdown. But he also made a number of mistakes. And maybe this is the game where pressure breaks pipes and causes more turnovers, and hopefully they can get a defensive score out of this one. But if you're a team, this is the worst possible matchup you have in terms of my offensive line is down 3 guys and I have the backup quarterback. I mean, and then it comes down to, can you find a way to deal with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Hawkinson, those guys, and they got Thielen back.
Yeah.
But if they can handle that part, they're gonna get home and make plays eventually, and hopefully that's enough to cause them real problems. So you have to love that matchup for you. Now it just comes down to, can you do enough on the offensive side of the ball? That's going to be a big question. That's going to be the question. But you have to, given the slate they've faced, you have to feel, like this is your best shot to win, even though it sucks you have to do this internationally in what is called a home game. That if you can't get it done here, this is going to feel like a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And with the way that the schedule is, you're just starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel. It's greener grass is ahead. It's the first 4 games have just been so brutal. So let's talk about Pittsburgh real quick, because This is a team. It's funny. It's Pittsburgh and it's Jacksonville. Just have this ridiculous turnover margin that they're winning with right now, and they can't sustain it. I refuse to believe they're going to sustain it, but this is the world that we're living in at the moment. I find myself like partially impressed with what Pittsburgh is doing and how Aaron Rodgers is playing, and then on the other hand, it's just like it's not moving the needle for me. Like I don't want to say that they're frauds, but I don't consider them to be as good as their record is right now.
I don't think many Steelers fans think they're a particularly good team. I am curious though. Did you watch the Packers-Cowboys game?
Yeah.
Okay, so after Jordan Love seemingly had a vice grip on the ball, every time the Browns just absolutely decked him, he sort of eats to the ground and just drops the ball. I was so enraged at this. This is sort of what they're dealing with. The Browns are absolutely pasting some of these quarterbacks, and they will not put the ball on the ground.
Well, that was my whole thing. That was my take when I saw that. I was like, we got them. We broke the Packers. They're struggling with the Cowboys.
I mean, the turnover thing has been enormous. Obviously, look, part of the turnover margin for the Steelers is they played the Patriots, and the Patriots gave them like 5. But yeah, I mean, look, this is who they are. This is what they want to do. They obviously got the weird lucky bounce where Cam Hayward and TJ Watt put their hands up. Carson Wentz throws the ball to him. Credit to them. They put their hands up and then it just magically falls and TJ Watt's able to catch it. But, they obviously lost the one turnover, which would have been a touchdown to Jalen Ramsey. I mean, this is what they want to do. They want to play aggressively. You saw Juan Thornhill at the goal line crash down, and if he's there a half beat earlier, he might be running the other way with the ball.
Yep.
That is obviously not what the Browns do because the Steelers are a heavy zone team. They're a trap type team with their pressure and their blitz stuff and the ways they want to change things up. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of where you look at the Steelers and you go, one, the ball does not go down the field at all. Part of that is their protection. They cannot protect Aaron Rodgers at a super high level, and Aaron Rodgers is not interested in holding the ball very long. So, even the play where DK Metcalf is able to rumble all the way, it's largely all him running after the catch. Good design of the play, but this is sort of what they're dealing with. And that's going to be really interesting for the Browns, given the way they play. Can the Browns, obviously DK Metcalf is a bull, but are you going to be able to sort of disrupt the timing of their release of their routes? The Steelers obviously have a million tight ends, and they may have to use them because I don't know that Calvin Austin's going to be back for the Browns game, and he's been a very good player for them. I don't know how much Roman Wilson is actually doing for them at this point. So it's really DK Metcalf and basically tight ends. That's going to be an interesting matchup. Grant Delpit's done a really good job with tight ends to this point. Again, you go against the Lions, they had the one explosive play, but it's another game where it didn't feel like the tight end is killing you. I think that's important to point out. Freiermuth was not a big factor in this game, but obviously has been somebody that they want to get involved with the Browns. They've still got
Washington and then Jonnu Smith as well.
Yes. Now, Jonnu Smith could theoretically be a weird matchup for the Browns. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see how they sort of tackle that. But yeah, I mean, I just nothing about the Steelers makes you feel like they are good, but they are good enough in the games they're playing, which is all you can ask. Now, all that being said, the Steelers got a much easier slate out the gate than the Browns did. So are the Steelers suddenly going to go on a slide here once the schedule gets difficult? Probably not, because they're annoying and a vampire and don't die.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, like they have reason to be worried that they are not sort of progressing in a way that's going to get them going. Now, if you are the Steelers and you're not going to get caught up in scheme or everything else, but you are saying they're hoping that what they're able to do on the ground is something that they can build on, especially when it comes to the rookie Caleb Johnson, because he got going a little bit in this game.
Yeah.
And you can at least see why they liked him, but will they sustain? Unclear.
Yeah. All right. Well, and then as we keep the theme of the AFC North going, Kansas City absolutely tattooed Baltimore. And Baltimore's down 7 starters on the defense. Now Lamar looks like he's going to be out for at least another week or 2, maybe more.
At least this week, because they're playing Houston.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, like Houston's terrible. They are awful. But it's an interesting matchup because Cooper Rush is now going against Danielle Hunter and the other dude.
Will Anderson.
Like, that's legitimately could be a problematic situation for them. Those two are right now absolutely killing it.
Yeah, the Houston defense in general is really good.
They have talent, but they just end up doing dumb shit. Like, it's one of those things, like, they're a team that just has to be infuriating to watch, which doesn't exactly hurt my feelings. But they offer nothing offensively right now. It'll be, can their pass rush do anything? Can the Ravens pass rush do anything against the Houston Texans offensive line? Unclear. They're down Madubuike for the season. That's a huge loss. Are they going to find somebody else to be able to step up and help? They lose
Roquan's out now, right?
Yes, he's also out. Though again, outside of that Browns game, he's been craptacular. But that is a problem for them in the fact that it was sort of managing the defense with a rotation of linebackers next to him, and all of a sudden with him off the field, all you're going to have is a rotation of linebackers. So they could be susceptible there. Like, the Ravens defense looks very vulnerable. Yeah. Nate Wiggins, I don't know what ended up the diagnosis was. Obviously, he left the game. They're in a world of hurt. Offensive line continues to struggle. Derrick Henry continues to be less than. Some of that is clearly the offensive line, but coming off a 2,000-yard season, there's sort of a natural trend to go backwards a little bit. Yeah. They have skill players. I don't know if Isaiah Likely is going to be back for this week, or if they're going to try to wait for the one more week and a half and try to get him back. Hopefully they feel like their hopes are, hopefully we can get this one against Houston on Thursday and then get the mini bye and then have Isaiah Likely back and maybe get Lamar back. The overall problem for Lamar, the Ravens, is if Lamar Jackson is kind of hurt, that is not a good situation for them. Every time in his career where he started to slow down, he ends up getting hurt more seriously. It also just changes what they can do offensively when he can't be that guy.
Yep.
But literally every time he's been sort of whittled away, it has ended with him ending the season on the bench, injured. So I will be curious to see if they are more cautious and say, we're just going to muddle through this and try to win as much as we can, stay afloat until he gets back and is healthy. But, I thought it was interesting. And John Harbaugh has more credibility, even though he's 100% right, for somebody compared to like Kevin Stefanski, where he's talking about we're not a good team yet, because it is a process. It is just a month into the season. Nobody wants to hear that, especially after a month. You want to sort of be ready to go. But like, even a team like the Ravens with Super Bowl aspirations is trying to figure this thing out. Now, ultimately, I don't think the Ravens are going to go that far. But nevertheless, it is reasonable to believe that they can get better and do all those things and still be right in the mix for the division.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, because it's the same thing we talked about with Tillman. Hamstrings can linger. And especially a quarterback like Lamar, who has to do the stop-start thing and, make quick movements in and out of the pocket. And when he feels the rush coming, boom, he's going to take off. That is a scary, scary stick of dynamite on the back of your leg there. That can flare up at a moment's notice. And anytime, look, I look at Lamar as like a high-end sports car, man. If you got a flat tire, changes everything. It changes how the defense will defend you. It changes the amount of different things they can do coverage-wise. Like they can go to man, they can turn their back on you now, whereas they can't when you're ready to run.
It does open up the number of ways the defense can play you. And Lamar Jackson, particularly this year, it's not, the offensive line has been atrocious for them, but he is also holding onto the ball and trying to extend plays at times when he should not. He's going to have to theoretically play on time more. Now they can do it. They can be effective, but it does take something away that he's not doing the thing he does, where he exhausts your defensive line because he can just sort of trot around and they're gassed trying to chase him. By the fourth quarter, they're out. So that becomes another factor. So yeah, there's just a lot of things for the Ravens to be concerned about. And now they are sitting there going 1-3. We cannot get into a super deep hole. Like a loss to the Texans would be a disaster for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, with the way their season is shaping up, it does look like Pittsburgh's in prime position to steal one. And I never in a million years would have thought that Pittsburgh's roster upgrades this offseason would have put them on Baltimore's level. But hey, man, that's football, and that's the NFL. And injuries will whittle any team down to its core. All right,
true, but the thing the Steelers are consistently having to worry about is Broderick Jones throws a lookout block and Aaron Rodgers is done. Like that's, and then the whole thing, you don't know where this thing goes at that point. So, and I think that's true. I mean, look, the Browns are playing 4D chess here. When you don't have a quarterback you care about, then you're listen. You have nowhere to go but up. So yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow out. Lamar Jackson, at least out for the moment, and Aaron Rodgers is always a threat to go out.
All right. Now let's talk about Cincinnati. And I mean, Cincinnati, we touched on it last week, and this team is pretty much in the same boat as they were last week, and they're going to be for the rest of the season. No Joe Burrow, no dice. It doesn't matter in Cincinnati. The defense isn't good enough to carry anything, and the offense without Burrow certainly isn't good enough to put the team in a position to contend for the division, let alone the playoffs. So, I mean, I don't even know what more there is to say about Cincinnati.
Yeah, they've given up 72 over the past 2 weeks. I mean, look, the way the offense played in that game against the Broncos, Joe Burrow wasn't saving them. They had a million penalties. They had all kinds of problems. Jamar Chase couldn't get going and was basically holding court on the sideline for most of the game. Defense was caught up in a bunch of bad positions. Frankly, I think Denver left a lot of points on the field in that game, at least 7. Obviously, Bo Nix threw just a pick to a hell of a play by the linebacker, but for the Bengals. But, I just thought the Bengals looked like I don't want to say they looked defeated, but because I think that's unfair, but they just look like a team that is looking for answers and has no idea where to find them right now. Because look, there's a ton of heat going against the backup quarterback. I'm watching the line play, man, and look, the Broncos did a bunch of things to screw with them. Mugging guards to then drop out, and you probably saw a clip on social media where they mug up the linebackers, drop them out, and you end up with 4 linemen on one dude, and the 2 DNs just beat the hell out of the tackles and sack Browning. Like, that is what you can do. And when Marius Mims is personally, I think he's struggling. He has not played a ton of football. He's trying to figure this thing out. I've always been sort of a skeptic of Orlando Brown Jr. I think he's overrated. But regardless, there's just not much going right. They cannot run the ball at all. And so everybody's pinning their ears back and playing nothing but pass. And that you can take that away when you know it's coming if you're a team that's good enough like the Broncos. And now, as mentioned earlier, they've got to now go play Detroit. And now here's the thing. I'm genuinely interested to see this dynamic. One, I still think Detroit is going to handle their business. But if DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold are both out, that you've got corners 3 and 4 against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So that at least could be interesting to see how, if this could be a game where Browning goes off and throws for like 4 touchdowns. But I still think Detroit is going to take care of business. I don't think the defense can stop them at all. And at some point, Browning's going to throw a pick, and that's going to sort of end the game.
All right. Well, let's go talk about our future number 1 draft pick and the jerks that keep winning over in Jacksonville. At San Francisco game, man, it's just like Pittsburgh. It's just turnovers just falling into these guys' laps, and they're taking advantage.
Yeah, I mean, again, you play a quarterback who's clearly hurt. Mm-hmm. When you had a guy who was playing better, honestly, than Brock Purdy was. In terms of like things like red zone efficiency and Mac Jones, and Kyle Shanahan just does himself no favors of these things. Like I know there are a lot of people who love Kyle Shanahan. I do not think he's a great head coach. despite the winning and everything, because he just does things that just make you incredibly angry if you're rooting for that team, and how he manages things. Some of the decisions he makes, he's always been way too conservative with his play calling and decisions on fourth down and these type of things. And just you dump games to teams you shouldn't, because seemingly you can't sort of pivot and get away from things. Obviously, they lost to the Browns and PJ Walker. So look, that game was obviously frustrating from a standpoint of the draft pick. I still don't think Jacksonville's any good. That's the thing that drives me nuts. I just don't think they're any good. Their defense is pretty good. Their defense is proving themselves to be pretty good. And yes, they are finding ways to create turnovers, which is obviously keeping them in these games, which is really frustrating. Yeah. Because I think if a team just protects the football, they're going to beat the Jags.
Yeah, well, and I agree with you. But also, you look at what Liam Cohen's doing on offense, what he did in Tampa a year ago with the addition of Bucky Irving, and then getting, Rashad White and then Jenkins and all those guys. He's bringing the same thing to Jacksonville. You're seeing a little bit of a resurgence from Travis Etienne. He looks good. He had the long touchdown run this weekend. And then Bashal Tootin, they're bringing along slowly. But that's one thing that worries me about Jacksonville. It's like, I feel like Trevor Lawrence is going to get us exactly where we want them to go. But I feel like this running game and defense is going to get in the way of that all year. That's what's killing me. They need to let Trevor Lawrence cook. Yeah,
it is really annoying because they're like, I still think Brenton Strange is their leading receiver. Yeah. I guess Travis Hunter did a thing this week, so I mean, maybe he's going to start coming along. But like, that's the other thing that's sort of really interesting is Jacksonville is steadfast with their plan with him, and he doesn't play that many snaps. So I'm curious if this thing's ultimately going to come to a head, and they're just going to say, screw it. Instead of playing some snaps on both sides of the ball, you're going to play all the snaps on one side of the ball.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's something they're going to have to figure out. As it stands right now, I don't know how you could possibly get any sort of return on the investment for Travis Hunter. I mean, look, a super talented kid, absolute freak, what he's able to do, and especially to have the endurance to do what he's doing. But you paid such a hefty price for, in my opinion, a receiver who's a little undersized. And then a corner is never worth that, in my opinion. Yeah, I take a pass rush over a lockdown corner all day long, and I'll deal with whatever I have to throw in the secondary if I can put heat on the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be virtually impossible for him to justify even the Browns taking him at 2. Yeah. But yeah, certainly when you gave up, 5th pick, a 1st-round pick, and 36th pick, like, and I'm going to at least question the plan at some point. Maybe there could become a point where it's suddenly going to take off, and he's just going to be really good on both sides of the ball. You have to be frustrated watching him, after watching him in college, where he was, the Heisman Trophy winner. He was constantly just making an impact on both sides of the ball, and you have to be sitting there going, "Where's that guy? Why am I not getting this? He should be winning us football games, or at least contributing in a meaningful way." He's got basically less yards than I think still at this point, less yards than Cedric Tillman does.
Yeah, and that's going to be an ongoing story, and I'm sure if the Jaguars start to struggle at any point, you're going to see more of a microscope on that, and why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? So with the potential quarterback change on the horizon for the Browns, I feel like it's worth it to maybe look around the NFL and look at some of the other rookies that are getting a little bit more of a run, and just kind of show where, I mean, the peers that Gabriel's eventually going to be compared to. Let's start in Tennessee, man. Cam Ward is as talented a quarterback as we've seen come out in a while with the arm talent. It's a really, really good arm, live arm. But there's a lot. I mean, that's the worst team in football right now, no?
Yeah, Brian Callahan's ain't gonna end well for him. Yeah. Cam Ward knows how to give you a quote. I mean, straight up, we ass.
Yep. I feel like he says that every Sunday afternoon.
That's that about sums it up. Look, they have invested all across the offensive line. They still suck.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Ward is doing what he can, but he's having his share of struggles. Calvin Ridley was never going to be worth what they gave him. He's not, still not. And this team was just bad. Like, I still don't know who their edge rushers are after they gave up Harold Landry. This team was awful. And to ask Cam Ward to come in and fix it wasn't realistic. The coach, I never thought much of Brian Callahan when he was the offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. Why would I think he's capable? He wasn't even a play caller.
Yeah.
So I didn't sense that he was going to come in there and basically get out from underneath Zach Taylor and suddenly install a great offense. Like, say what you will, the Bengals offense is pretty damn bland in terms of what they do. Yeah. So I just don't think that situation is good for anybody right now. I don't see any hope either for the Browns. That could be an absolute bloodbath for Cam Ward. But we'll see. I mean, they've got, again, this is the thing. You start to look at the schedule when you get past these games and you start to look at the on the horizon. You're like, I love where this is going, but they've got to capitalize. But yeah, I mean, I don't. This is another one of the reasons why ultimately, and I don't think there's any sense from the organization this is any type of thing. The amount of coaches who I think are going to get fired this coming by the end of the season, I don't think the Browns want any part of that. I don't think there's going to be enough capable head coaches to go around. And I do not think you want to get yourself in that market.
Well, I find it too. I feel like the Browns are going to have a more difficult time attracting whatever candidates they want at head coach or at general manager if you still have this Deshaun Watson contract still looming. So until that's off the books, and I know it's going to be like a lesser amount, a couple of years from now, but still, when the bulk of it is still on the books, it might be a tough sell.
I don't see that as the problem anymore, simply because the Browns are going to have 2 first-round picks. You're going to be able to theoretically pick the quarterback you want. Yeah. If they'd have to be bad enough for that to be the thing. So then at that point, the pick is good enough where you're sitting there going, this is a prime opportunity. I think it's more along the lines of I think you're probably like 75 to 80% chance of getting somebody worse. I think Kevin Stefanski is a much better coach than most people do. Mm-hmm. They just suck right now in terms of some of the talent they have, and they've got to get that squared away. But if I'm trying to make a case for him, if you're sitting there going, like we obviously get tons of stuff on the forums and stuff being justify Kevin Stefanski's existence essentially, and you go, well, he can't scheme anything, he can't coach anything, blah 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 blah, and then I sit there and I go, Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fannin, Dylan Sampson, Isaiah Bond, Aiden Huntington, all these, Mason Graham, all these guys are playing well. And, even if you want to try to throw all the credit for Mason Graham and Carson Schwarzenegger, Jim Schwartz, it's inescapable how many guys are able to come in and play well right away that you contrast Quinshon Judkins versus Caleb Johnson. If you were to look at it from a 30,000 foot view, you'd think Caleb Johnson was the guy who missed a bunch of the preseason process, given the struggles he had, or Trevion Henderson, who hasn't done a whole lot. Yeah. Judkins has been great. Fannin has been great. These guys have come in and immediately been able to make an impact. And from that standpoint, you have to be thrilled that the Browns are going the way they are, that they are basically saying that we're just going to lean on these kids who can and hope they grow and try to develop them as much as possible. And certainly if Dylan Gabriel can come in and play well, that only makes it an even easier argument. But yeah, I mean, and then the other side of that is, you have what appears to be a home run draft. Obviously, if they get if Dylan Gabriel comes in and lights it up, then it becomes like, Hall of Fame type draft.
Yeah.
How are you? But even if they don't, let's say Dylan Gabriel can't play dead and Shedeur Sanders isn't anything. Are you really telling me that you're going to try to fire Andrew Berry on the idea of, body of work? Because clearly Jimmy Haslam didn't view it that way, and he just crushed it not only in the draft but undrafted free agents, Malik Collins, and all these other things. They're not going to do that. They're going to sit. Jimmy Haslam's got to be sitting there. Yeah, of course I'm going to let this roll and see if they can build on this and do something. Do something because, outside of luck, which does play a role in the draft.
Of course.
See Washington Commanders last year. It does take time to sort of figure out the draft process, and to get really good at it. And Howie Roseman's a great example of that, where he stunk to the point where they hired Chip Kelly and sort of, put Howie Roseman in the basement like that dude from Office Space at one point, and then he sort of earned his way back in, and now he's unquestionably one of the best GMs in football. Like, it takes some time to figure this thing out and get it right, and I don't know if this is what actually happened, but it certainly, the timing works out in terms of when Catherine Raish, now Hickman, took the job here, and their drafting has gotten way better. That's a correlation. I'd love to know if that's really a part of it, that she sort of clicked into something that's really working for them, but it's really working for them. So they're going to keep their job short of just an abject failure. I mean, again, I've said all along, it's not ownership that's going to fire these guys in terms of they're just going to get fed up and fire them. It's going to be the locker room that says, you got to get rid of this guy and make it to a point where it's untenable.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, to your point, I don't see it. I don't see that happening. I think with the schedule easing up the way that it does, and I think with this young roster slowly building steam and finding itself, I feel like that's not really going to be an issue. I will say this. I feel like if they do go to Gabriel and Gabriel just falls flat, I feel like that's when people are really going to come after Stefanski, because Stefanski, and that's his guy, right?
Yes,
that's 100%. Yeah.
There's no getting away from that one. Like, and look, so many people, and certainly I said this, was like, let Stefanski pick his guy. And then the second it happened, everybody's like, don't let Stefanski pick his guy. Like, make up your mind. I don't know what Dalen Gabriel's going to do. I still think he's ultimately probably going to be a long-term backup. I still think Kevin Stefanski saw what amounted to be a left-handed Case Keenum. He had some success with that, but ultimately not the amount you'd want to have. Case Keenum was never a franchise guy. They had a nice playoff run. They've got to get the right guy at that spot, and that's going to be interesting with that.
Yeah, and I think you could make the argument that what Dylan Gabriel did for Kevin Stefanski's raised the floor of the quarterback room, because you know Gabriel, he's mature, he's intelligent, he understands high-level football. He's got a ton of snaps. I feel like you knew he was going to be able to play. We just don't know long-term if it's going to be enough to build around. So I feel like this pick was to raise the floor of the quarterback room long-term. Yes. I think next year's first round or the year after that is going to go after the ceiling of that quarterback room.
Right. And again, we keep touching on this. Like, if they pick a guy who's not ready to go,
good,
then they're going to have to play one of these guys or get another veteran. So, that's the other part of this, is like, everybody wants to rush and say, we got to figure out what these guys can do. We got to figure out what these guys can do. But like, even, it's still going to be prudent to draft a quarterback because you're always going to be searching for that guy who can push you to the top level. So yeah, I mean, that's the other part. Now, having said that, I really like Jackson Dart coming out of college. Certainly, I would have been happy if the Browns took him. They opted to decide the price was too high to move up to get him. He won his first start, brought a lot of energy to the Giants. I don't know how sustainable it's going to be when he's trying to do as much as he did in terms of his legs and running through people. Worked great for what they needed, and especially now. Malik Neighbors out for the year. MetLife gets another one, unfortunately. And, the offensive line is what it is. I really like Jackson Dart as a long-term play. I don't know where this is going to go when you just lost your best guy. You have questionable blocking and everything else there. Like, and Dable seemingly coaching for his job.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, okay? I'm with you. I'm a big Jackson Dart guy. I love the talent. I love his ability to rip the ball down the seams. That was my favorite thing he did at Ole Miss. He's a great downfield thrower. I mean, Pete, like, I felt like I was watching Tim Tebow on Sunday, man. This is not why you force feed a rookie into the lineup. I feel like this is going to do more harm than good, especially losing Neighbors. And God forbid Andrew Thomas goes down again. This isn't a good offensive line with that guy. And they had him on a snap count the week before. He played roughly 30% of the snaps. They're like, okay, let's go. Let's get rid of the veteran. Let's throw the rookie in there. And I hated the move. And I even though it was a win, I hate it more because Jackson Dart is not Tim Tebow. Let this kid develop.
So I think it provides a really interesting sort of contrast of the Giants as an organization. As an organization, you saw it on if you watch that if you watch the Hard Knocks thing with the front office crap, which that will never ever happen again because they were so bad.
Yep.
And made them look really stupid. That is everything I don't want an organization to be, which is plugging in a kid because whether you're bored or you just want to throw them out there or you want to try it or there's pressure from ownership or all the things. And yeah, you get the immediate return of that game. Great. You won. Again, I'm happy for Jackson Dart, but this could get very ugly very fast. It doesn't feel like a team that had a plan. Had a plan, has a plan. And, there's every possibility if you keep doing it like this, and we'll see, that you're just going to get him injured for nothing, essentially, at that point. The Giants are doing everything I don't want the Browns to do in terms of handling the situation. I want, the Browns as a team to make the decision based on who obviously gives them the best chance to win. But I also want them to put them in a position to succeed. I'm hoping that Cam Robinson is able to get comfortable at left tackle. I'm hoping Jack Conklin's able to get back at right tackle. I'm hoping the Browns' running game continues to progress. I don't want to just throw the rookie in there and ask him to fix a whole bunch of things that it's unfair to ask him to fix. It's not realistic to say, hey, save the offense.
Yeah.
But that is essentially what the Giants just did. And yeah, immediate return, you get a win. And maybe that's a world, if Dylan Gabriel plays this game, there's a world where that could happen. But if he's winning the same way, that obviously he's not that dude. Yeah. But if he's doing the same stuff, you're going to sit here and go, what the hell are we doing? And sit here and go, this seems like a mess. And just not be something that I want to see. Again, I think the Giants, I think they're a team worth paying attention to in terms of how they handle this situation, because I think they are doing everything that I would not want my team to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And especially with Neighbors now hurt, I personally believe that the Giants should have felt obligated to give the world Jameis Winston and Malik Neighbors. For the first month of the season, they could have eclipsed 1,000 yards. I mean, that's the match. That's the match made in heaven that I wanted to see personally.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's people who also want the Bengals to trade for him just to see him rip it.
Jason Higgins would be amazing.
Yeah. Look, Jameis is entertaining. Of course, there's a limited span on how fast they can go. But I do wonder if the Giants are going to try to ship him off somewhere for that, or if they try to ship off Russell Wilson, because that's the other part about this. Let's say Jackson Dart struggles, and they feel like going in a different direction, or they don't like the situation he's in. Where do they go? I mean, do they go back to Russell Wilson? That seems unlikely. Do they go to Jameis Winston? It's a very curious dynamic, and that's the thing that sort of worries me about Dylan Gabriel. I'm not saying it's impossible you go back to Flacco, but it will feel bad if you go back to Flacco after going to this kid, even if it's the right decision, just because it will be very deflating for people to say, hey, we went with this route. You don't know what that will do for the locker room and all this stuff. And who knows, maybe there's a world where Joe Flacco can sort of regain his composure and footing in this whole thing. But it just feels like, again, it's not guaranteed, but it does feel like when you hand the keys over to Dylan Gabriel, you are sending a very serious message on what this is. And I do not mean that to mean you're surrendering. I do not believe that for a second, but it does sort of change the dynamic in terms of what you're trying to do with this team and what having a rookie in there who's 15 years younger than Joe Flacco, and what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I would say, if you look at the investment, okay, I would consider it far more problematic for the Giants to move off of Dart for one of those veterans than if the Browns went with Dylan Gabriel and then moved off of him. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about the 94th pick of the draft. You're talking about a player who they felt that there were 5 guys that they liked better and wanted more at lesser positions than this guy. So at the end of the day, for me, if they start Gabriel and it fizzles out or just doesn't connect or whatever, and you go back to Flacco, I don't see that as problematic. And I mean, maybe that's just me. I just don't think the investment is going to be so heavy that it's like, well, you can't ruin the kid's confidence, or you can't do this, you can't do that.
I agree with you. It's a good argument. My fear, and look, maybe it won't feel like this if it actually happens. I don't want Dylan Gabriel to feel like a scratch off. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yes, they picked 5 players before they get to Dylan Gabriel, and that's, again, that's a great argument to say, well, it's not the end of the world if you go back to him. But you also don't want to. You do seemingly want him to be here for the foreseeable future. You don't want it to feel like he's disposable. Now, what I will say is Dylan Gabriel seems to have his head screwed on the right way and seems to be mature and seems to be an adult. I don't sense that if the Browns were to bench him, that it would cause him to fall apart. It's more about the noise around the situation that's annoying. And look, the Browns can handle it. I mean, to the same point, we can talk about this very briefly because I really don't care. But like, the Browns aren't freaking out when Shedeur Sanders is talking to the media.
Yeah.
Like, what's really interesting to me about this whole thing is I don't see any traction. And it's partly because the Browns don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he talked to Mary Kay Cabot, he talked to ESPN 850 and his dad, Tony Rizzo. But like, it doesn't feel like it has any impact whatsoever, other than for me to say, man, I wish he had an agent who would tell him, you probably shouldn't be doing this because it's going to potentially hurt you. If you're not as good as you think you are,
yeah,
it may limit your job prospects for the future. But at the same point, like, this is part of one of the reasons I liked the Browns being the team that took Shedeur Sanders is because they don't let this stuff bother them. They aren't a team where, like, they're going to have a head coach who's so annoyed or whatever that he turns around and cuts him, or have a guy who's going to feel like making a point of it in the media or making it a big thing. Like, Kevin Stefanski, to his credit, I don't know why we're asking about Shedeur Sanders saying he's capable of starting in the NFL. Like, what else is he going to say?
Listen,
I suck. I need to sit for at least 2 years. I'm going to bide my time and go. Like, but nevertheless, he diffused the thing by saying, look, I hope everybody thinks they're capable of coming in and starting. And that's sort of the end of it. Like, that does have real value with this, and that he's able to use these situations. Now, the other part that helps is in Cleveland. It's not a huge media market, but nevertheless, there's still an appetite for people outside and nationally, both nationally and locally, that want to see the kid play. Yeah. But I do think that element is important, that they can just sort of let it roll right off them, and nobody really thinks twice about it.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of if and when Shedeur does see the field, look, there's a lot of season left, man. We got 13 games left. You're gonna see, I think, a move eventually is going to be, Dylan's your starter, Shedeur's your backup, and Joe's probably just, in the quarterback room being whatever. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm assuming it's going to be at some point, though. It's just, it all largely depends on Dylan Gabriel. If Gabriel gets hurt, obviously that's going to accelerate everything. But if he plays poorly, I see him going back to Flacco before I see him going to Shedeur.
Yeah, and obviously that's the other part about this is, like, we take for granted the kid can get whacked and get knocked out. Like, unfortunately, that's, it's a physical game, collision sport. And if the Browns don't block well, he's going to get drilled.
Yeah.
He may be tough, but, there's a physics component involved. So we'll see. Look, if they make the decision and they think he's the best guy, more power to him. I don't love the idea of doing it against Minnesota. I don't love doing it the idea given the offensive line they're trying to sort it out. But the flip side of that is Joe Flacco is making it really difficult
Yeah.
to sort of defend what he's doing and say, well, he's a veteran, because he's not playing like the veteran guy you need him to be, other than to say he's not, making waves in the media or anything like that. I mean, he's handled that part like an adult, like a professional, but on the field, it's just not, it got to be better. And again, you mentioned it before, the schedule has been absolutely brutal. I'm sure him as a competitor is thinking, just let me get to an opponent that's not, potentially in the conversation for the Super Bowl, and let me see what I can do.
Yeah, and for me, that's the big thing, because I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody's going to sit there and say that he's playing well. Nobody's going to sit there and be like, this guy's the future or he has potential or anything like that. He is what he is. But we've played the elite of the elite. I just give me just the Minnesota game. Just something where it's not an elite defense with an elite juggernaut offense, and we're just running into a buzzsaw. I want to see the line be able to protect him a little bit, and I want to see if he's not capable of making plays when he's comfortable, or if it's just he's getting pushed off his spot, he's not mobile anymore, and that's affecting his accuracy, and he's looking at the rush, and he's not getting the ball out on time. There's so many little things that are falling into it, but it's like the opponent is what it is,
Right. So, I mean, that's what's going to be interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall practice, and see how if they're changing up the reps and who's getting them, and if they're splitting them, or if they're just going full on Dylan Gabriel, if they're still going full on Joe Flacco. That's the stuff that I'm sort of interested by, because if they're repping them both, it could be a situation where they start with Flacco and then have a quick hook. Who knows? But I'm not willing to just sort of jump on the reporting and say absolutely they're going to go with it. One, because I haven't heard from Lane, and two, I just don't know that this is the week for it, given all that's going on, the tackle situation, just how early it is in the season. I mean, we're about to be in October, but you've got to play into January, and I don't know that the Browns are ready to pull that pin. Even though, look, everything we've heard, they believe Dylan Gabriel can play, which is great. It's certainly what you want to hear. Obviously, he's got to prove it on Sundays if that's the idea. But I still want him put in a situation that's going to allow him to succeed.
So, two things real quick before we get out of here. Number one, with just completely lost my train of thought. All right, so Gabriel as a starter. Yeah, just had a point and drew a blank there, homie. Either way. Moving on, because we're going to wrap things up. So this Sunday, bright and early, we got the Vikings in London. We are going to be very curious to see who starts at quarterback. Here it is. I'm so sorry. So say they do start Flacco, okay? Like you said, possibly having a quick hook with Flacco and plugging in Gabriel. I'm of the belief that if you're going to play a rookie, man, give him the whole week. Give him all the reps in practice, all that. I hate the idea of a quick hook and a plug. What's your take on that?
Generally, I would agree. I want a fully formed game plan around him. Your entire focus is about putting him in the best situation to succeed, putting him to his strengths, not making it feel like we're switching this thing and trying to make it work on the fly. Now, they can plan for both and potentially have an effective game plan for each one, but it does strain how you practice. And Dylan Gabriel, I don't know how many reps he's had with Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and some of these other guys, and that is something where you generally are curious about. The only sort of benefit you get, and it may not matter with Minnesota, they may not care, is that does it change how they play defense? Do they, Joe Flacco, a pure pocket passer, you know exactly where he's going to be, versus Dylan Gabriel, where you probably know where he's going to be. It's just a question of, how is he getting there and all those type of things. You get a little bit of a different dynamic in terms of pocket passer versus potentially being able to do boot and play action and all those things to get outside the pocket and just roll out. And and the possibility where if there's open field, he can actually get those yards as opposed to sort of easing down like an old man to a bathtub. Can he? Here's one of the things I don't believe is going to happen. I do not believe for a second that Dylan Gabriel is going to force defenses to suddenly keep an end at home because they're worried about Dylan Gabriel rolling out the other side and keeping the ball. They're still going to play Quinshon Judkins with everything they have until Dylan Gabriel makes them prove that he is such a dynamic threat with his legs. Like, yes, he can move a little bit. He is not Justin Fields or one of these guys that's suddenly going to make you completely change your defense. You're going to play them straight up until he didn't. Because, look, the Browns did that exact thing with Jordan Love, who can do a little bit with his legs. They just said, screw it. We're still going to take away the backside cutback and let Jordan Love get a few carries and hopefully set him up to take a shot.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing, too. It's like Dylan Gabriel's a nice athlete, right? But if you game plan to stop his rushing ability, he will not gain a freaking yard. Like, that's what we're dealing with. It's not like it's no different than Baker. Baker can make a play with his feet, but if you expect him to do it, he's not going to get back to the line of scrimmage. So I can understand that he's more athletic than Flacco, and he offers a little bit more, maybe an escapability, or like you said, if he rolls out and he's got a lane, he can get more yards. He's not going to rumble to the line and then slowly ease into a baseball slide. Like those are the little things that his athleticism will give you. It's not going to alter what the defense does at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that sort of works for him in as an athlete is he's good at understanding angles, like in terms of how to escape the pocket. Like Oregon played Penn State, and he was able to get an angle on Abdul Carter, and get outside. That's not because he's some great athlete. It's because he understands where the angles are and how to sort of maximize ability. Now, that's genuinely a talent. Mm-hmm. It's in the same way Patrick Mahomes is not some sprinter, but he's annoying as hell. Yeah. When he wants to move around the pocket. So it's going to help a little bit. It's not going to solve the problem. If those tackles aren't blocking anybody, he's just going to get decked. It's just a question of how long he's going to take to get injured, which obviously was I had the same concern with Joe Flacco. At some point, he's just going to get killed. Yeah. And Dylan Gabriel's going to be on the field either way.
Yeah. Well, so before we take off, what do you feel about the little rumor that's floating around right now that Kevin Stefanski wants Flacco, but Haslam and Barry want Gabriel? Any validity to that, or you think that's just low-hanging fruit? That's an easy situation to pitch.
I just don't see the point, for that to be the disagreement. Andrew Barry is not a guy that strikes me as. I think he's going to raise. I think he's going to make his case, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where it becomes like a big issue between the two sides. I mean, these guys are so married in terms of how they sort of operate, and ultimately, Andrew Barry will make his case, but he fully understands and does not sort of get in the way about Kevin Stefanski being the head coach. So he's going to roll with it. And again, it's September still. It will be October by the time they play this game. I just don't see the urgency. Meanwhile, look, Jimmy Haslam said before the season ever started, he wants to see the rookies play. So that part doesn't surprise me. Yeah. It's more along the lines of, is he just sort of saying, I want to see the kid play, but you guys do what you do? Or is he saying, I want to see the kid play? I don't get the sense that it's a situation where, that Jimmy Haslam saying he's going to play. He's going to defer to his guys. So could there be a polite disagreement on how they want to approach this thing? Absolutely. You and I could have a polite disagreement. I mean, me and Jeff Lloyd have one in terms of this. He wants Dylan Gabriel to step right in. Now he's wrong, but nevertheless,
this is right. He can be wrong.
I mean, we can disagree on that. And there are a lot of people who think Dylan Gabriel should step right in. I understand why they feel that way. I'm just not there yet. So I think that's ultimately as much as I'm willing to make out of that situation. I'm not into this. I'm not going to subscribe to this thing of, and I don't even know if that's the idea is that there's some massive wedge between the sides and this is an angry situation. I doubt it. I think it's guys may have who they feel like is the best opportunity to play in the same way that Andrew Berry may have a different take on which tackles should be out there in a given week.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like ultimately at the end of the day, if one side is your 40-year-old journeyman quarterback and the other side is your rookie late third round pick who's essentially a flyer, I don't think either side is so passionate that it's going to create an actual issue.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where, I don't sense anything that's going to be like, if we're talking about this in like week 8 or 9 and Joe Flacco's still playing like crap. Okay. But like not week 4 into week 5.
Yeah. Especially week 4 into week 5 after that first month of the year. I just feel like it's a little early to close the book on anybody given the schedule and the injuries and all that stuff. But either way, Peter, it is always a pleasure, my good sir. Thank you guys for tuning into the OBR streaming network and catching us talk about last week's game and preview this week's game. We'll be back next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Browns Vikings live from London. Let's get it, boys. All right, man. Pete, always good, brother. I'll catch you later. And Browns fans, take it easy.